That we're going to be working to, I'm going to get.
Hello, Progress Kentucky. We have got a ton of Kentucky political stories to run through this week. We've got a really interesting guest lined up for you as well. We've got Mathew Ruberg, who heads up Rank the Vote Kentucky. We're going to discuss this strategy for greater direct democracy, its prospects for Kentucky. Of course, after the interview, we will close with a call to action. But before we get into it, are you ready to help turn Kentucky purple? We know our state is deeply red, with supermajorities in both the state Senate and the state House of Representatives. The General Assembly is primarily focused on cutting taxes for the rich, cutting social services for the poor, and defunding public education. If you want a commonwealth that works for all of us, please join Progress Kentucky, support our campaign to turn our commonwealth purple, make a donation at our secure Act Blue website, and spread the word that we're tired of the GOP ignoring the needs of regular folks in Kentucky. We think our commonwealth is worth fighting for. So now let's go ahead and check in with our co-host. Let us know who you are, where you are. What does your protest sign say today? You there watching on the internet, feel free to take part too. Please put your protest sign, a rally sign in the comments, and we can put it on the screen. So I'm Aaron, coming to you from Childsburg, which is a cookie cutter home development on the outskirts of Lexington. And my sign today says, "I like my weekends, so I'm thanking the unions." All right, now let's turn to our friend Kimberly. Kimberly, are you there? Kimberly?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
How are you? What's your sign say tonight?
My sign says that all executive committees in this state need to work together so that Democrats can rule in this state.
All right, executive committee, a little inside baseball for the Democratic Party there for you. Thank you so much, Kimberly. All right, and now Willie. Willie, are you there?
I am here. I'm here coming to you live from cell phone in Mount Sterling, Kentucky. Tonight, my protest sign says "Not backing down." I've seen setbacks in the last week or so, and I just keep reminding myself that hatred directed towards people is always temporary. It's always some other thing that's being thrust on other human beings. But when you know that you're right and you know that you're on the side of goodness, you just keep standing back up and eventually you'll win.
Nice. I love that. Not backing down. Also, not taking down his Christmas tree. Is what we got from Willie. All right, so we got a few different stories we're gonna cut in. Look, I'm not one to take down a Christmas tree early. There's a constant tension in my household because I like to wait till Epiphany, and my wife is like, "Well, I'm off work on the 26th, so this is getting out of here." And anyway, so I'm not one to do it quickly, but Willie, it is going to be February very soon. I'm just putting it out there.
This is my goal. Once my husband says, "Are we ever going to take down the tree?" I will wait 7 days and then think about it.
You know what? I was brought up that you cannot leave your Christmas tree up when the clock strikes 12 on New Year's. Yeah, you're supposed to clean every crevice of your house, sweep it out, throw that broom and mop away, and your tree needs to be down. They said it's bad luck. I don't know.
I don't
I
know.
heard that too, but luckily Episcopalianism said leave it up till like the 12th or something. And I said, I will take that little piece of your religion because it makes me feel lazier.
Well, you know what? I didn't even put up one because I'm grown now, right?
Because you're grown. Who doesn't love? Come on. Anyway, and I spent a couple decades in New Orleans, so there was also a tradition in New Orleans where you just like take off the original ornaments and put up like more purple and gold and green ornaments and call it a Mardi Gras tree. But really, I think at a certain point, unless you've gone to fake, which no disrespect there, there's a fire hazard consideration, right? So at a certain point, you need to think about safety also. All right, so that was not on the run-up show. This is a pretty strong departure from what we'd initially planned to cover, but I'm glad that we can bring you this public service announcement about proper Christmas tree management. Let's get to the news of the week. Let's do it. So really excited to bring you one about just and kind of keeping with my sign, there's been more and more union victories here in Kentucky. Kentucky, as you should know, it's a right to work state, which really is a right to work for less state, which is really, some kind of creative branding by the Chamber of Commerce, who really hates unions and worked really hard to make it harder for unions to organize in the state of Kentucky. Despite those challenges, we've seen some really great news. Coffee shops in Louisville. We've seen another Starbucks vote to unionize. We've got all of the Synergos. I'll be honest, I don't really know how to say that. Synergos coffee shops have voted to organize in Louisville, and then actually it looks like Trader Joe's is voting today and tomorrow, I think, whether or not to organize in Louisville. And then, of course, if you recall, Heine Brothers, they did vote to unionize as well. So, it's going to be hard to get a non-union coffee in Louisville pretty soon. I think Lexington is lagging behind, unfortunately, but very good to see that kind of momentum joining, kind of building in our state and specifically in Louisville. So that was a story of kind of some victories I wanted to share with folks. And I think it's just indicative of a larger wave of labor popularity, right? We had Matt Alley on, I think I'll mention him later on, but Matt Alley, who blue collar writer, labor organizer, does a really good job of paying attention to the labor movement. He shared some of that. He was on, I think, maybe about a month ago, 3 weeks ago. If you've missed that show, look back on it. But yeah, any thoughts about unions and the kind of strength of unions, or whether you prefer a union cup of coffee, Willie?
I prefer a union anything. Both of my grandparents, my grandfathers were union miners. So my father was a union miner. I grew up understanding that there is always a tug of war between management and the workers. And you have to have a union or they're always going to strip away until eventually other people are like, oh, maybe we should have a union. But let's keep from having to get to that stage by maintaining them. And I think that's been the sad loss of my generation. Watching my brother abandon unions, for example.
Oh, your brother, like in the family, is that you saying? Yeah. It's interesting. My mother-in-law was a teacher here in Kentucky, which is a kind of quasi, union, union. They've definitely got a strong pension. There was like a reason that was created and developed. And then there's my stepfather-in-law was a Corvette worker, so he worked in the GM plant in Bowling Green. Really great, union pension that I think made his later years a lot better when the kind of different health issues came up. And they both are like super conservative and more than happy to throw their lot in with Republicans who hate unions and will do everything in their power to weaken workers' rights. So really an interesting kind of like. Mm-hmm. Just a little confounding, really, honestly. Like, don't you see what's happening here? Like, but I don't know, Kimberly. Any thoughts about you're closer to those union coffee shops or soon to be unionized coffee shops? What are your thoughts on it?
I think it's great. I think that it needs to happen a lot more in certain industries. Being one that's on salary and part of leadership, I can't say a whole lot, but I am going to say this. The Macy's in Herald Square in New York is unionized.
All right. so hope for your workplace yet. And I did want to note, I think today is actually the 133rd anniversary of the founding of the United Mine Workers of America. So Willie, your kind of family folks, really that awesome important step here in Kentucky, especially. And very just sad news that as much as there still is unionized mines, around the country, there are no unionized mines in Kentucky right now. Like, that kind of legacy is, as you pointed out, Willie, kind of long gone, unfortunately.
When my grandfather died, I think the only thing he left me one gun and one Union banner. It was that important to him. He was working in the time when union bosses were literally having people thrown on porches when they were unable to work anymore or when they died and just abandoning their bodies. And I think there's this belief among everyone like, oh, that can never happen today. But as Roe v. Wade being overturned just showed us, we will slip right back into whatever awful things we used to do. And the mega wealthy back then at least believed in society in their own way, right? That they would create whatever programs and libraries and Carnegie-ish things. Our mega wealthy aren't doing that. They're buying yachts, right? So it would be worse if we allowed things to get like that today.
Theoretically, yeah. There's like that kind of community sense of like, well, I gotta at least give the little people something, right? Whereas, no, I'm just gonna go to space.
Yeah.
So, hey, we got another story to move on to, some local politics, keeping the eye on Louisville. Kimberly, you want to bring us up to speed with what's going on with the Metro Council?
I sure can. Right here in Jefferson County, the Fairness Campaign Director, Chris Hartman, that we all know and love, submitted his application this week to be the next 6th District Louisville Metro Council person. Now, there are some shifts happening in the Louisville Metro Council, as we have probably mentioned before, such as Cassie Chambers Armstrong. She's going to be leaving the 8th District to run as the Democratic Party nominee for the 19th State Senate District, replacing our friend Morgan McGarvey, or should I say now Congressman Morgan McGarvey, who's now in D.C. David James, who was the former council leader, has moved to the Greenberg administration, and that would be Craig Greenberg, our newly elected mayor. And so has Keisha Dorsey, now that I think about it, and she had the 3rd district. So the process of appointing replacement members falls to the council itself, normally, which has some folks raising questions about just how democratic that is. Now, there are some changes. I just came from my own Louisville, Jefferson County Democratic Party executive meeting. So, yes, they will be taking applications. They will be taking resumes and asking people to come in and speak. And then they will vote at that particular point in time. So, it's going to be exciting to see who's going to be taking those places in the council here in Jefferson County.
Yeah, definitely some changes afoot for sure. And it's a ton of council members there. Like, yeah, a lot of districts in Louisville. So kind of natural, I guess, that some would be vacant for a minute or two. But absolutely exciting to see Chris Hartman kind of throw his hat in the ring. He's been on the show before. He, I think, would be a wonderful addition. But I guess
I
that'll be up to
love
the
Chris
council.
Hartman. He is just like, he is the bomb.com. Okay. And if I was in his district, I would vote for him. But I'm not. but I will tell everybody to vote for him because he truly cares about people. Okay. And that's what we need more of. And then there were a lot of seats that here in Jefferson County that we didn't fill, and Republicans were able to just kind of be shoe-ins. So we have to do better as a party here. And yes, it would be a lot of council people because Aaron, Jefferson County is the largest county in Kentucky.
I know that. I know. Bigger isn't always better, Kimberly. But
Oh, 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 oh.
all right, we've got a lot of folks watching tonight, so we shouldn't get into a Louisville v. Lexington fight because I think we got some folks, piping in from Richmond. Maybe they're gonna cover, and then of course we got Doug in the comments. He will plug, Harrison County and Cynthiana as the place to be. For sure. So, all right, let's go to our third story of the evening, and kind of one that tapped Willie to share with us, because I know you're paying attention to this. Kind of some of the worst instincts of legislatures showing up around the country and here in Kentucky as well.
Yeah. So I think we all knew going into this legislative session that we were going to see some anti-trans, anti-gay legislation, specifically legislation that targets children. And I want to start by saying that I have a friend who just lost a trans child, just this, who she had fostered for a long time. And what is important for all of us to consistently remember is even if we see a statistic that seems alarming, which is alarming, I think the specific statistic is 60% of trans individuals will try to end their life by the time that they are 25. Or LGBTQ individuals, actually. But a single affirming adult reduces those chances to the same as non-LGBTQ people. And that's why this legislation that we're seeing pop up around the country is so dangerous, because it's making it really hard for affirming adults to show that they care or show that they want those LGBTQ youth to feel accepted. We have schools in Florida where teachers are literally having to take books out of their entire classroom and provide no books unless the school has actually given it to them. Obviously, the school isn't going to give them any books with any gay character. So literally, teachers can't have books in classrooms. We have West Virginia that has one of the most terrifying pieces of legislation that would make it illegal for anyone to show anyone in drag to a person under the age of 18. So at this point, I think even the word is content, any content. They don't differentiate between trans people and people in drag in the legislation. So it's basically potentially illegal for someone to watch RuPaul's Drag Race with their child. We have similar legislation in Iowa, again, making it, that could make it illegal for anyone under the age of 18 to see anyone in drag. And again, they don't differentiate between trans and drag because, as a general rule, the GOP doesn't validate trans identity. So effectively, you're making it illegal for trans people. And if one of these bills were to pass, to even be around someone under the age of 18 or to be in public. North Dakota has a particularly disgusting bill that would make it illegal for anyone to allow a person who is transhuman or who identifies as not human to use a facility. They called it an emergency bill, but this doesn't exist. The only purpose of this bill is to mock trans people and to somehow scare individuals into thinking that they're insidious happening. What we see in Kentucky right now is House Bill 30. We have basically a bill that's going to say that unless your birth certificate matches what's on the door, you cannot have a bathroom at school. And that seems like potentially not a big deal unless you know a trans girl, unless you know a trans boy. a trans girl who's been presenting like a girl for 5 years? Are we going to make her go into a boys' bathroom? Are we pretending for a second that that's safe? So I think it's just really important that we don't allow this to be normalized. We don't allow attacking children in politics to be normalized, and we keep fighting.
Let me just say, I'm so sorry to hear about your friend's child, and as we put in the chat, the 988, the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, is available 24/7, free and confidential for anyone who is in distress and could use somebody to talk to. And it is it's fraught, right? The idea that these like GOP conservative culture warriors are more than happy to just gleefully wade in, to what is a just very challenging situation, and to make kids' lives harder, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like why? What? Again, like I heard you say earlier, Episcopalian. Yeah. So, I myself go to Episcopalian church, not every weekend, but, quite frequently. And I've just never seen in my Bible anything about, Jesus going after gay people. Right. And that is something that historically has occurred for as long as there have been humans. Right. So the idea that it's not like he, didn't see it. He just chose that was not something that in his kind of love God, love one another distillation of all the rules in the Old Testament, rose to any sort of prominence, right? So like, how can these people, base this all on their faith to do these things, to make kids' lives harder? Just seems,
especially in light of Christianity, in which the lessons that we're taught are to love other people. If someone calls something clean, not to call it unclean, right? To serve other people. And I think I'd be remiss not to point out that really what's happening across the board, right, is that unless it matches the identity of the GOP, so unless it is overtly white, male, and Christian, they're going to try to demonize it and make it seem like it's something horrific. So you have in Florida now, DeSantis, who has blocked a new course that would be African American history. And now the AP board announced today that they would be editing that class, because in Florida, you can't talk about systemic racism because they deny racism. How are you supposed to teach Black history without talking about racism? Because when we look at everything that African American people have accomplished in this country, it's been despite racism, right? How are you going to look at kids and say, well, you can't talk about this racist experience because the official position of the Department of Education in Florida is that racism doesn't exist? It's mind-boggling, but we don't have a Supreme Court. It's gone, and they know this. So I think we're going to keep seeing them push this envelope as far as they can push it.
I have something I would like to say to kind of piggyback on you guys. This Christianity thing, right? It goes as far back as to the origination of this country. People use religion to cover up their evilness. I've always wondered, even when I was a kid, like, okay, if God and Jesus were like in Israel and now these areas and parts of Africa, like, how are their names David and Luke and John? It doesn't even sound like anything but European stuff, right? So then everybody goes by the King James Bible, which is what? Redone for a king and his cohorts what they wanted it to say, right? So I'm not saying we can't believe in the Bible, but we just have to have enough spiritual awareness about who we are to understand what we're reading. So I agree with you 100%. If we had more love in this world, stuff wouldn't be happening the way that it does.
Amen. Yeah. We're not a Christian show. I don't know. Again, we've kind of the amount of time we spent talking about Christmas trees and Christianity.
That's because you all started it, but I know
Yeah.
history. I'm your historian on this show because I just come up with stuff just off the top of my head because I've always been so intrigued with one, history, world history, also, okay, and number two, mafia families. I don't know why, but I've always been intrigued by that.
Did not see that one coming.
I love that, Kimberly. And what I really love is, so I teach, I'm a linguist. I teach French. And one of the things that is true when you're speaking a second language or when you're learning words is you have to have a context, right? If you don't have a way of if you don't have a lens for looking at a situation, you can't understand it because one word might mean different things in different situations. And I think, if we're going to ride this religious train, if Christ gave us a lens, I think it was love, right? So when I have people arguing that Jesus wasn't a refugee because they hate refugees and that's not easy for them to live with, obviously that's not their lens, right? So whether we're talking about Christianity or anything else, I think love is a nice lens to maybe help turn Kentucky purple.
For sure. Yeah.
Yes, Doug Price, that's what I said. I said historian. That's right. Historian. I like it.
And if you are listening to the pod and you are not seeing the comments, they might be worth going back and checking them out. There's some nice engagement there. Thank you so much, everyone. All right, so we are a little bit ahead of schedule, but I know that our guest is here and ready, so never a bad thing to be ahead of schedule. So really excited to kind of expand our conversation tonight and talk a bit about kind of what's going on with democracy in our great commonwealth. We are bringing on Mathew Ruberg, who is one of the organizers of Rank the Vote Kentucky, to talk about the idea of ranked choice voting, which has gotten a bit more attention recently and is being actually implemented in a number of different states and areas around the country. And so Matt is a advocate for ranked choice voting here in Kentucky, and we're excited to hear from him. Matt, thanks so much for joining us.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me on the Kernels of Truth tonight.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for giving us some of your evening to chat about what y'all are up to. So tell us a bit about yourself, kind of what's your background, most importantly, what's your protest sign, and then how'd you get into this work?
Okay, I'm glad you asked about the protest sign. So I just was listening to a couple episodes as I was preparing, and my protest sign comes from Mary Carr, a great author, and that sign says, "Put the weapon down and make a sandwich." I think that food is a great nonpartisan solution to almost all of our problems.
If you just did more snacking, and then we would be better off.
We would definitely have a better commonwealth for sure. But yeah, so my background, I got a political science degree from UK, and after a little bit of bourbon, I could talk your ear off about politics. I didn't do that for a job for a long time. I was in technology. And then I saw everything that was going on nationally, and I decided that I needed to do something about it. So I got really lucky, and I got to work on some national campaigns, and I worked for the National Democratic Redistricting Committee recently, which was really eye-opening, really interesting stuff. And I did that because I was curious to see why things are the way that they are. I see a lot of people who are frustrated with the way things are going. I see a lot of people my age who have basically just like tuned out and kind of stopped paying attention to politics, thinking that their vote, their voice doesn't matter. And I was interested in like what's really going on behind the scenes. I wanted to like pull back the curtain a little bit. And in that journey of mine, I came across ranked choice voting maybe like 2 or 3 years ago. I read about how Maine was the first state to pass ranked choice voting, and I became a total fan of ranked choice voting ever since then. And 2 years ago, I happened to be in the first meeting of what has become Rank the Vote Kentucky. And I had never really done this type of work before, like local organizing, and I wanted to see what it was like. So I offered to be like a leader of that group, and we've been working for the past 2 years to educate anyone who'll listen to us, citizens, election administrators, elected officials, about ranked choice voting. And I'm trying to make the argument that advocating for ranked choice voting is the best return on investment for your time and support if you want things to get better. And so just the last thing I'll say about ranked choice voting, about Rank the Vote Kentucky, we try to do that by first building a community of other Kentuckians to be a part of. I'm trying, myself and the other volunteers are trying to create a space for people who are curious about how our system works and how we can make it actually work for people. And the other thing that we really focus on is education, because when we go out and talk to people about ranked choice voting, here in Kentucky, probably 8 out of 10 people haven't heard about it. But if we provide some information, just give like the 2-minute pitch, I'd say 9 out of 10 people support it, because I really think that there's no real good argument against it. So that's a little bit about how I got here, and just a brief overview of Rank the Vote Kentucky.
Awesome. So is it, no shade here, is it an all volunteer group? Progress Kentucky is an all volunteer group. I think they're very small but powerful. But yeah, is that where you guys are right now?
Oh yeah, we are all volunteer. I tell people that I work for Rank the Vote Kentucky because I quit my job in the summer to like focus on this, but I don't get paid. So I am, and people have told me, that means that you're a volunteer. So yes, we are all volunteer at Rank the Vote Kentucky right now. And yeah, all grassroots, nonpartisan, open to anyone.
Awesome. So yeah, tell us a little bit about what it is and how does it work and why is it better than what we've got right now?
And tell us like we're third graders.
Yeah.
Okay, for sure. And that's the thing I'll preface, like when I talk about ranked choice voting, I think that it's like a pretty broad topic, because I think that ranked choice voting, like the way that we elect people, obviously has an impact on a lot of downstream things. I don't think that it's complicated. I know there are people who do think that it's complicated, but I think having a conversation about it is a great way to get through it. And so I hope we can do that here tonight. So, and I think the best way to approach it is by kind of talking about our current system and how that doesn't work for people. And so, like I said, we have been around Kentucky, and when I talk to people about the current environment and how things are working, I think what I hear from a lot of people is they're a little frustrated and they're concerned. And I saw some numbers the other day. It was like 20% of people trust their government to do what is right, and 78% of people are dissatisfied with the way things are going. And that is definitely disconcerting, right? That's a worry. And when I think about like why that is, I think there was a quote that one of the other volunteers shared with me that said, "We shape our rules and then they shape us." And so I think it's important to talk about the rules that we have with our current way of voting and how it shapes like the incentives and the actions of people who are like involved with that. So the current voting system that we use is called plurality voting, but I like to call it single choice voting. Okay. And so what that means is when you go to the ballot box for each office, you can put down a single choice for who you want to win. And there are problems with that way of voting. And I want to talk about 3 specific problems. The first problem with that is that there are non-majority winners, right? The reason it's called plurality voting is that you can win with a plurality, which just means more than any other candidate. So, for example, let's say you have 3 candidates in a race, like a primary. Candidate 1 gets 40%, candidate 2 gets 30%, and candidate 3 gets 30%. So with plurality voting, candidate 1 would win with 40% of the vote, but 60% of people didn't vote for that person. And I think when we're talking about participatory democracy, that's a pretty big, that can be a problem. The second problem with the current way that we vote that I want to talk about is the spoiler effect. So in races with more than 2 candidates, the third candidate can siphon away votes from their supporters' next favorite choice, ensuring that they both lose. So if we go back to that example that I just talked about, let's say those 2 candidates who got 30%, who finished in second and third place, let's say they're like-minded candidates, right? And so their supporters really are 60% of the electorate. But when both of them are in like a primary, they can pull apart those votes and end up ensuring that their supporters have their least favorite choice in the election. So that's the second problem. And then the third problem, I think, is kind of comes from both of those, which is the involuntary polarization that we see. I think you talk to a lot of people and they say, well, you know, it's so polarized. It's so tribal. I see these like mean campaigns. Like, I wish it wasn't like that. And the problem is that the way that we vote right now almost incentivizes that to happen. And the reason is that candidates don't need to appeal broadly right now, so long as they can get their partisan plurality out to vote. And voters, when they go to vote, they're worried about wasting their vote with some new voice, a new idea. And moderates and independents are encouraged to vote tactically and vote for someone who's electable. And so I think what you see is people kind of like getting into the camps of, you know, just progressive or conservative because it seems like that's the only electable option. And so those are all the problems that I see with the current way that we vote. And ranked choice voting solves all of those problems, which is why it's so great. So moving on to ranked choice voting, I'll describe quickly, hopefully, how it works, which is it's a simple change for voters, right? Instead of choosing one candidate for each race, you can rank candidates in order: first, second, third, and so on. If your first choice can't win, your vote is automatically transferred to your second choice, and so on. And that happens until there's a majority winner. That's the main difference when counting votes in a ranked choice voting election. If you take to count votes in a ranked choice voting election, you take all the first place votes, you add them all up. If someone has 50%, a majority, they win, just like they do right now. If no one has 50%, you go in rounds, eliminating the last place person. Anyone who voted for them has their choice go to their next choice. You put all those votes back into the pot, see if someone has a majority, and keep going on. And ranked choice voting is also known as instant runoff voting because a lot of people now are familiar with a state like Georgia that has a runoff when no one gets a majority. They have a whole nother election with just those 2 people with a way lower turnout to get the same outcome as ranked choice voting, which is a majority winner. But ranked choice voting is better because you just have to go in once and vote for it. And so it solves all the problems that I talked about with plurality voting. It requires a majority winner. It eliminates the spoiler effect. And it allows voters to express their true preferences. There's no more, oh, is this person electable? Am I going to waste my vote by voting for them? They can just go to the ballot box, speak their truth with who their vote is, who they're voting for, and then it'll all shake out when the votes are getting counted.
That's awesome. Cool. Well, I thank you for explaining that to me like I was a third grader. I will soon be talking to my third grader and see what she says. But I did want to throw it to Kimberly to see if she had any questions. I know Kimberly's been active in elections in Kentucky for an awfully long time. Kimberly, thoughts about ranked choice or instant runoff voting? Kimberly.
Yes, I love it. And honestly, I've only been involved for the last 2 years because I'm only 18.
Oh, right.
But,
Right. I forgot about that.
But I appreciate all the hard work that you're doing. And most definitely, everything, including the kitchen sink, is going to have to work to get Andy back in office as well. So I just commend you on what you're doing. I would like to know even more information about it, like how I can get involved.
Yeah, well, Kimberly, you can call me. I would love to talk to you. And I think that I would love to talk to anyone who's interested. And I think,
I'm
like,
special though. Like you said, I would like to talk to anybody. I know, but I'm real special.
well, Kimberly, I'll give you my number and we can talk after this. But yeah, I mean, like, we're small enough and we're lucky enough, I think, that we can sit down and talk with anyone who's interested in this. Like Willie, I hope I did a good job explaining it like a third grader. But if I don't and people still have questions, if I didn't and people still have questions, like I'm happy to talk on the phone and explain more about it and talk more about, whatever issue you're working on and maybe feeling frustrated with. I can guarantee you that ranked choice voting can help your cause. So, yeah.
And I already did my homework and understood. I was worried about Aaron not getting it. But one of the things that I love it. I think it's exciting. And let's see, I'm trying not to upset any Democrats, of which I am one. But there was a presidential election not too long ago, and in the primary, I voted for the candidate who wasn't my favorite candidate, because I thought that the national convention was clearly doing everything in their power to get the other candidate, and thought, I guess I'll do this, even though I didn't hate the candidate I chose. But what's interesting is I made a choice that made me dislike my own party. And I spoke to a bunch of friends sort of after the election, and 5 or 6 of us all did the exact same thing. We wanted one person and we chose someone else. And it was bigger than just who's electable, but to some extent, it was even to what extent do we trust our own party. So I think this has benefits for every single political party, whether or not they're a winning party. And that's what excites me.
Yeah. And I would follow up with that, Willie, by saying, if you look at longer term, I think one of the nice things about ranked choice voting is, it represents exactly or much closer what people are actually thinking than what you see in the results, like you're mentioning for like a primary. And I think it provides a real opportunity for even parties to see what people really are thinking. Because if you see that third place or fourth place candidate, get 8 or 9% that first time, and then 12 or 13% that the second time, the second election, I think it is a signal to whoever is running the show that, hey, okay, the issues that this candidate is advocating for resonates with our party or our group. And it might not, it usually doesn't change the outcome of an election, but it's a good signal for anyone who's trying to just move forward and represent the people who are voting. Like it allows them to have more information and be closer to the people.
So I'd be really interested in your thoughts on, so we've seen Alaska adopt it, right? You mentioned Maine. What's your analysis of kind of what happened most recently in Alaska, where a state that is, awfully red elected a Democrat to represent them, their one House seat against, I think, Sarah Palin was the kind of top Republican vote getter. What's your like? Did ranked choice voting play a role in that outcome, or like how do you think that worked?
Yeah, I think ranked choice voting did play a role in that outcome. And what I would say before talking about like any other state is that it's so important to be aware of like the context in your state. I think that's something that I learned a lot from going from national stuff to working in Kentucky. And so in Alaska, like they're very purple, like they have I think their like House leader is a Republican on the ballot who caucuses with Democrats. So they do a lot of kind of like switching. The party lines are not as set in stone as a place like Kentucky. And but specifically for Mary Peltola, she was obviously a Democrat, like in a lot of ways, but she had some Alaska specific things I think set her apart from what you would think a typical like Democrat is. And what you saw with, and I think that ranked choice voting allowed her to be that way, allowed her to kind of like work on both sides of the aisle. And then what you saw with the Republican candidates, so there were 2 Republican candidates, and they finished in second and third place in the initial ranking. And the third place Republican candidate, 20% of his voters ranked Mary Peltola as their second choice. Okay, and like you wouldn't think that, and you would never know what their second choice is with single choice voting, the way we do it right now. And I think that Mary Peltola's, the way that she campaigned in a way that, knowing that it was a ranked choice voting election, she appealed broadly. She had her base, but she appealed broadly. And then what you saw with the first place Republican nominee was she was saying, I'm not even going to vote for someone as my second choice. I'm the best person here, no matter what. And I think people are kind of tired of that, like false bravado. They're tired of my way or the highway. Like people really want to see like broad appeals, issue-based campaigning. That's something that Mary Peltola did. She was campaigning specifically about Alaska things. I know like salmon fishing. She was like a real big proponent of. And I think that ranked choice voting allows candidates to put behind that like toxic campaigning, focus on the issues, and like talk about things that people really care about, instead of what we see right now, where it's just, well, this other person is so bad, like you have to vote for me. There's no talking about actual issues on the campaign trail. I think that what you saw, if you looked at Alaska, was ranked choice voting, incentivizing those positive things that I can talk all day about it being like a result of ranked choice voting, but you can see it right there in Alaska.
That's great. I'll ask you one more question and then throw it back to my co-host. But what do you think the prospects are in a state like Kentucky, where we still got, partisan vote, like straight ticket voting is an option? And, I don't know. How do you get something like this done in a state like ours?
Yep. I'll talk about why it's hard and why I think we have a good opportunity in Kentucky. I think it's hard because, we have a Republican supermajority that has to pass legislation in order to make ranked choice voting a thing in Kentucky, even like a local option. That's a red state like Utah. That's how they started with ranked choice voting. They made it an option for municipalities to opt in to ranked choice voting. And so, it's hard I think it's going to be hard to get a Republican supermajority to do something about that. Because here's the thing. They have been elected right now with plurality voting, right? And so legislators are risk averse and they want to stay elected. And so they were elected with the system we have right now. So that's going to be difficult. But I think we have an opportunity in Kentucky because of real life examples of our current system not working. For example, the gubernatorial primary that's about to happen in Kentucky for the Republicans. They have 12 people right now on the ballot. With plurality voting, someone can win with just over 8% of the vote. You could win a plurality election. I don't think that's actually going to happen. I would love for that to happen because it would make it like real obvious what the problems are. But what I think you're going to see is someone win with like 30% of the vote, maybe. I mean, 70% of people are not going to have voted for that candidate. And I think that people are going to be upset. And, you know, I've even heard I was in Frankfurt and I heard Damon Thayer bemoaning the spoiled election. And it's like, dude, we can solve this right now. We have, like, there is a way to solve this. And so I think that's an opportunity in Kentucky to make it happen. And so, yes, obviously it's going to be a heavy lift, but I definitely think that it's possible here in Kentucky.
Cool. Kimberly or Willie, got a question or a comment?
Got a comment. I wonder if we can call it like open market freedom, America #1. Yeah. Style voting.
Willie, I am writing that down right now. That is a fantastic tagline.
This is, I mean, because honestly, this is about the open market, right? It's about what people actually want. And we have a state where 90% of people want medical marijuana to be legal. We have states that want women to have the right to choose, and we have legislators who are saying, no, your rights are between me and God and not you, certainly, right? So I think there are wonderful opportunities to tap into multiple groups, and I'll be making that phone call right after Kimberly because she's more important than me.
Kimberly, you want to close us out here?
I can most definitely do that tonight. This has been a great show.
I think so.
You know, and no, you're not. I'm not more important than you, Willie. I'm just cuter. That's all. But
And you ain't got a Christmas tree, right?
But I just want to say thank you to our guests, Mathew,
Mhm.
tonight for Rank the Vote here in Kentucky. It's been great hearing all the great things that are going to be coming up. And I just know that Andy's going to win. Like, that is so much on my mind, right? Andy and Pamela Stevenson for Attorney General. So now we're going to do the call to action, and we're putting out a call right now to support our friend and our regular guest, blue collar writer Matt Alley. He's an independent labor journalist doing important work to support this renewed union movement, and he's doing everything from Warrior Met to Amazon, Starbucks to Heine Brothers. Blue collar writer is there to promote solidarity across the board, or as he likes to say, kicking. Oh no, can I say this word? Kicking ass for the working class. Oh, I hear you, Matt. If you think that the labor movement deserves a hard-working independent journalist, go ahead on and head to bluecollarwriter.com/home/donate. Next thing on the agenda is, yes, we will be back next week. Progress Kentucky is a nonprofit organization registered with the Kentucky Secretary of State and organized as a 501c4. We are affiliated with the Indivisible Project and the Commonwealth Alliance Voter Engagement, known as CAVE. And we are also very, very proud to be members of Forward Kentucky Network. You know, Progress Kentucky, we have goals, right? And one of them is to educate, also to organize, increase voter turnout, and advance a progressive agenda through civic engagement. Production this evening was done by Mr. Nate Orshan. Thank you so much, Nate Dogg. And also the theme song that you hear in the beginning and the end, it comes from him as well. So talented. We do have talent. I got to admit, we have really talented people that are affiliated with Progress, Kentucky. I have to say that. So go ahead and listen to some more of his music and his information. And you can look him up at natosongs.com. That's NATO songs.com. And if you happen to miss our weekly live stream, do not fret, my pet. You can always, and I mean always, go on Facebook and see our source links right there. And also, we do audio podcasts as well. And they are available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and wherever else you might get your podcasts. So the logo and some graphic content was provided by Couchfire Media. More information can be found at couchfiremedia.com. So I know I've been away for a while, but I'm back, and I am so happy to be with my friends again, my family, and you, the listener, and you, the viewer. We really appreciate you tuning in each week. Please like us, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, and continue to support us. And you know what? You made it through the week. This is Hump Day. You've done it. You are there. So for the continuation of the week, just do something nice for somebody. It'll make them feel good. And guess what? It'll make you feel good too. Until next week, same bat channel and same bat time. Everybody have a good week.